Welcome, dear friends. It's always good to have you back tonight. Tell me, what season do you enjoy most for a quiet mystery? I love the ones that come with steam on the window and tea that never seems to cool. So, pour your cup, settle in, and let the hush of the evening guide us. Tonight's mystery begins, where silence hides its secret. Morning came quietly to Street Mary Mead, the air still, the lanes washed clean from the night's rain. A proper English calm. Miss Marple sat by her window, knitting in hand, tea beside her, every motion practiced, patient, exact. The village ran like clockwork, and she liked that. Patterns meant safety, predictability meant truth. Across the green, Mrs. Potley carried her basket to the bakehouse, always punctual, always 3 steps faster when gossip was fresh. Today she was humming. That meant she had news. The postman's whistle came next. 2 short notes, then a long one. His same morning tune since 1929. He stopped at every gate. Letters exchanged. Good mornings traded. Routine intact. Lady Bantry appeared at the far path, her hat already fighting the breeze. Her voice carried before she reached the hedge. "Jane, you'll be coming to the match, of course." Miss Marple looked up from her knitting. "Wouldn't dream of missing it, Dolly. You know I like to keep score. In my own way." Lady Bantry laughed. "Just don't solve another murder before tea." She vanished down the lane, perfume lingering like punctuation. Inspector Slack cycled past next, not in uniform, but no one ever believed he was off duty. He nodded once, eyes scanning even the harmless things, hedges, gates, post boxes. Miss Marple smiled faintly. Old habits die harder than crimes, she thought. The village settled back into its rhythm. Children's laughter near the shop, the creak of the grocer's sign, the faint scrape of George Hawkley's mower over at the cricket field. A sound she knew by heart, each pass steady, measured, precise, like a man counting years with every stripe of grass. Then came Victor Salt. Too well dressed for morning. Too pleased with himself. He walked as though he owned the ground. "Morning, Miss Marple," he said. "Change is coming, you'll see. New pavilion, new roof, new life for our little club." She looked at him over her teacup. "Change," she said softly, "has a habit of collecting dust faster than tradition." He laughed, uncertain whether it was a joke. He walked on. A cat darted from the hedge. The postman cursed mildly. A cartwheel rattled against a loose stone near the lane. Ordinary sounds, all in place. Miss Marple watched it all with quiet eyes. Every action, every sound, every pause between them. To most, the village looked peaceful. To her, it looked busy hiding something. She sipped the last of her tea. The cup trembled slightly on its saucer. The wind paused. Even the clock at the church seemed to wait before striking 10. Then it came. Faint, metallic, somewhere beyond the green. A note out of rhythm. A sound that didn't belong. She set down her cup. Knitting stopped. Eyes turned toward the cricket ground. But one sound that morning didn't belong. The path to the pavilion was busy again. The morning stillness had turned into chatter. Everyone moving. Everyone preparing. Miss Marple walked slowly, her cane tapping the gravel. She liked the sound even, certain, predictable. The kind of rhythm that told her the world was still in order. Near the hedge, Mrs. Potley fussed over her trays of cakes. 2 sponges too few, she muttered. "Someone's taken one. I know it." Marple smiled gently. "Perhaps a hungry bird." "Mrs." Potley frowned. "Birds don't eat jam fillings." She hurried off, apron flapping like a small white flag. At the scorer's table, Nell Armitage laid out her books, pencils sharpened to a perfect point, ruler aligned, watch beside her notes. Neatness made her feel safe. Miss Marple noticed that too. Then she saw it. A small object on the edge of the table. A needle. Curved. Sharp. Not an ordinary one, the kind used for leather stitching. Nell saw her glance. "Oh, that," she said quickly, "for repairing the scorebook spine." Her tone was bright, too bright. Marple nodded, pleasant, calm. Very practical, she said. Then she moved on. George Hawkley stood by the sight screen, arms folded. "Morning, Miss Marple," he grunted. "Pitch is fine. Grass is perfect. Won't stay that way if they start their fancy improvements." He gestured toward Victor Salt, who was talking with the vicar near the pavilion steps. "Always planning something, that one. Doesn't trust good work when he sees it." Miss Marple smiled again. "Change never comes quietly, Mr. Hawkley." He snorted. "Not in my lifetime, it won't." A small boy ran past carrying cricket balls in a tin. He tripped once, caught himself, then dropped one. It rolled across the path and stopped by Marple's shoe. She bent slowly, picked it up. Heavy, she thought. Heavier than usual. The boy took it back, muttered thanks, and ran off. She looked after him. The weight lingered in her hand, even after it was gone. Lady Bantry called out from a distance. "Jane, come sit with me later, won't you? I brought lemonade." Marple nodded. Gladly. She didn't mention the ball. Not yet. The morning grew louder. Voices. Laughter. The hollow echo of bat against practice net. It was all so harmless, so familiar. And yet, the curved needle glinted once in the light. The cricket ball had felt wrong, and Mrs. Potley's missing sponge was never found. Small things. Always the small things. Marple had built her life on noticing them. She turned toward the pavilion, eyes thoughtful. Something simple had just gone wrong in a very precise place. But she said nothing. Not yet. Because in Street Mary Mead, truth arrived quietly, and never when invited. She noticed it. No one else did. The match began at noon. Clear sky. Even sunlight. Nothing strange to see. Miss Marple sat in her usual seat near the pavilion rail. Knitting rested on her lap. The crowd whispered in comfort. Cricket, after all, was the village's heartbeat. Alec Rowan took the crease first. Tall. Proud. Bat gleaming with polish. He nodded once to the bowler, calm and ready. The first ball struck firm. A cheer rose. Soft, but satisfied. All normal. Mrs. Pottle's tea bell hung by the kitchen door. It waited, silent, for its usual time, 34 overs. She had reminded everyone twice. No earlier. No confusion. That was her rule. Nell Armitage sat at the scoring table, head bent low. Every number neat, every run exact. Her watch lay flat beside the book. Ticking. Steady. Miss Marple watched her, though she couldn't have said why. The overs climbed slowly. 28. 29. 30. The field hummed with polite applause. Slack, off duty, stood near the rope with his arms crossed. He looked relaxed. He wasn't. He never was. Then came the moment. A pause. Faint but wrong. Nell looked at her watch again. Her hand moved toward the rope. The tea bell rang. Too early. The sound sliced through the chatter like glass through cloth. Every head turned. Mrs. Potley's kitchen door burst open. "Who touched my bell?" she barked. But no one answered. Players laughed awkwardly and began to walk off. Tea was tea, even when it came strange. Miss Marple frowned. Her needle stopped. She glanced at the scoreboard. Only 33 overs. Not 34. She knew the difference. The bell shouldn't have rung. Not yet. The pavilion filled fast. Chairs moved. Cups rattled. Steam rose from kettles. Someone hummed a hymn off-key. Routine rushed to fill the silence the bell had broken. Then it happened. A crash deep, wooden, final. The kind that stops every voice at once. A woman screamed. Then another. Feet thundered on the pavilion floor. Slack was already moving. Marple followed, calm and steady, like a shadow that had been waiting. Inside, the scene froze time. The trophy cabinet lay on its side, glass broken, cups and plates scattered like bones, and under it a man, Harold Cleave. Face turned toward the wall. Still. Dr. Haydock knelt beside him. Minutes passed like hours. Finally he looked up. "Instant," he said quietly. The cabinet must have fallen as he passed. Slack nodded, but Marple didn't. She looked closer, at the head, at the wound, at the small curved mark on the temple. Too neat, too sharp, two tiny lines beside a crescent bruise. She stood back, her eyes narrowed. The scene arranged itself in her mind. Weight, distance, angle, logic. Her voice barely above a whisper. "Strange," she said. "Cabinet. Corners don't print stitching." Inspector Slack took control within minutes. His coat off. Notebook out. Voice steady. Clipped. Familiar. "Keep everyone back," he said. "No one leaves the grounds." He knelt beside the fallen cabinet. Dr. Haydock stood nearby, hands folded, calm but uneasy. "Neck broken," the doctor said. "Likely crushed. Instant death." Slack looked up. "Accident?" "Seems so." Haydock hesitated. "Unless he was already on the floor when it fell." That made Slack pause. He turned to Miss Marple. She hadn't moved, still by the doorway, watching, listening. "Miss Marple," he said carefully, "you saw him earlier?" "Yes," she said. He was speaking with Nell Armitage about the subscription list, her voice soft but sure. He wasn't the sort to miss details, Slack grunted, nor to end up under a cabinet without reason. They began the slow walk around the scene. Cups overturned, papers scattered, a chair tilted, nothing broken that shouldn't be except the silence. "Who found him?" Slack asked. Mrs. Pottle raised her hand. "I did, Inspector. Came in for the scones, heard the crash and—" Her voice broke. Slack nodded. "Thank you. Stay nearby." Nell Armitage stood by the scorer's table, pale and rigid. "I was outside," she said quickly. Everyone was. The bell had just rung. Slack's eyes narrowed. "You rang it?" She hesitated. "Yes. Mrs. Potley asked me to." "Mrs.?" Potley spun around. "I did no such thing." The air thickened instantly. Miss Marple looked at Nell. Hands clenched, eyes darting, too neat even in fear. Slack's pencil moved fast. "Then why did you ring it?" Nell swallowed. "I thought it was time." How many overs had been played? 34. Marple spoke then, quiet but clear. 33. Slack turned. "What's that?" 33, she repeated. The board showed 33. I was counting. A murmur spread through the small crowd. Nell stared at her book. Her voice came thin. Perhaps the boy clicked wrong. Slack noted that too. He crouched by the cabinet again, studied the edges, ran his fingers along the floor. No skid marks, no drag. It fell clean. Haydock nodded. Weight alone could do that, but... He stopped. But Miss Marple didn't, her eyes fixed on the pattern of glass. Every shard pointed inward, not out. The fall had been forward, not pushed from behind. She looked at the carpet. Something there, fine dust, faint grey streaks like metal rubbed across wool. Not wood dust, not age, something else. She knelt, touched it, smelled it, lead, or close to it. She stood slowly. The hum of voices around her blurred into noise. Slack straightened. "Anything?" "Not yet," she said. "But something doesn't fit." He frowned. "You think it's murder?" She didn't answer. Her gaze had moved to the corner of the room, to a small detail no one else cared to see. A mark on the wall, round, smooth, not from wood, not from accident. She folded her hands, her voice barely above a whisper. Then she saw what everyone missed. Inspector Slack set up his table in the pavilion. Notebook, pencil, mug of cold tea, everything in its place except the truth. He began with routine. "Everyone here saw Cleve alive before the bell?" Hands lifted. Nods followed. "Then heard the crash after tea was called?" More nods. Safe answers. Miss Marple sat quietly near the window. She didn't write. She listened. Listening told more than speaking ever could. First came Mrs. Pottle, flower on her sleeves, voice firm. "I was in the kitchen, Inspector, preparing trays. The bell rang too early. I was shocked. My clock said 3:34 exactly." Slack looked up. "And your clock's right, Mrs.?" Potley drew herself up. "It's set by the church bell every Sunday." Miss Marple smiled faintly. Mrs. Potterly and her precision were rarely wrong. Next, Nell Armitage. Tight bun, pale face, hands clasped too neatly. I rang the bell. Mrs. Potterly asked me to. The older woman gasped. I did not. The air thickened. Slack's pencil stopped. So which of you misremembers? Nell looked down. The scoreboard boy was behind. I thought 34 overs were done. Slack leaned closer. Thought? Or knew? No answer. She stared at her shoes. He turned to Alec Rowan. You left the field after the bell? Yes, sir. Not out for 47. See anyone near the corridor? Rowan frowned. Only Cleve. He was headed inside. Said he needed to check figures. Slack wrote fast. He carried anything? Clipboard, as always. Lady Bantry coughed politely. Inspector, are we suspects now? Slack didn't look up. Everyone's a suspect until the facts fit. She sniffed. How vulgar. Marple's eyes moved from one face to another, patterns forming, words overlapping. A clock that said one time, a bell that rang another. A man crushed when the pavilion should have been full but wasn't. She spoke softly. Inspector, when the bell rang, how long before the crash? 3 minutes, maybe 4. And the players? Outside. Then whoever killed him used that interval. They needed an empty corridor. Slack nodded slowly. He didn't like agreeing with her, but he always did in the end. He turned to Nell again. Your overcount. You're sure it was 34? Yes. Because. I checked my notes. He snatched the book. Fresh ink. Still dark. Strange, he said. The rest's faded. This page looks rewritten. Nell's mouth opened, closed. Marple saw her thumb twitch against her palm, a nervous code. Fear, not guilt yet, but close. Outside, the church bell struck. 4. Every head turned, half expecting another crash. None came. Slack closed his notebook. One thing's certain, he said. That bell rang early. Marple looked at Nell's trembling hands. Her voice calm, almost kind. So why ring the bell early? Late afternoon settled like dust over the pavilion. The crowd had gone. Only quiet voices lingered. Slack, Doctor. Hey, Doc, and Miss Marple. Slack was pacing now, notebook shut, patience thinner than paper. We've got no weapon, no struggle, and no clear reason, he said. Just a dead man under a cabinet, and too many people timing tea wrong. Dr. Haydock pointed at the trophy glass. Cut from inside out, he said. Marple nodded. Glass breaks outward when pushed, but if it fell, she traced the air with a finger. Inward, always inward. Slack frowned. So, what does that tell us? That someone planned where it would fall. He exhaled hard. Then where's the thing that killed him? No one answered. Marple turned to the side table. It had been moved during the commotion. Cups, spoons, napkins, untouched now, except one item at the far edge, a strip of leather, small, folded, stiff. She lifted it gently. Could be from the cabinet strap, Slack said. Could, she replied. Her thumb pressed the edge, a pinprick sting. She looked closer. Thin wire ran through it, almost hidden in the seam. Dr. Haydock leaned closer. Fishing line? No, she said softly. Piano wire. Finer. Stronger. Slack squinted. Wire and leather. For what? Binding. Marple smiled faintly. Or guiding. She looked around the floor again. Near the broken cabinet base, a brass tack caught the light. It gleamed, too clean to have lived there long. She walked over, knelt, ran her finger along the edge of the baseboard, a faint groove. Circular, as if something had been fixed, pulled tight, then removed. Slack came to her side. What are you thinking now? Not thinking, she said, just noticing. She picked up the brass tack. It fit perfectly through the leather loop. Her eyes flicked to the ceiling beam above the cabinet's old place. Small indentation. No one else saw it. She pointed. There. Another tack once sat there. Slack stared upward. "You're saying the cabinet was held?" "Briefly," she said. "And when the wire was released, gravity did the rest." He muttered a low whistle. Ingenious, if true. Marple stood slowly. Someone used precision. Someone who understood tension, timing, and distance. Someone from the Pavilion committee, maybe? Perhaps. Or someone who repairs things. She looked again at the leather strip. The inner edge was darker, smudged with oil, faint dust clinging to it. Not dust from wood, dust from metal. From gears, bolts, hinges. She turned it in her hand once more. A small mark stamped inside. G.H. Slack saw it too. "George Hawkley," he said. "The groundsman." Marple nodded slightly. No reaction. Only that small, patient breath she took before a storm. She laid the leather on the table, looked at it once more, then spoke softly, almost to herself. It wasn't meant for cricket. Night came quietly to Street Merry Mead. No wind, no chatter. Just the slow hum of stillness the village trusted too much. Miss Marple sat by her upstairs window, the house dark except for one lamp, her knitting untouched, her thoughts steady, her eyes fixed on the cricket pavilion across the field. By day it was harmless white paint, brass lock, trimmed hedge. By night it looked different. It looked like a secret trying to stay polite. She had noticed a few things that afternoon. The lock on the pavilion door had been polished, too clean for a day of dust and panic. And the key, gone from its hook in the scorer's box. Slack had left at dusk, tired and cross. "Nothing. More tonight," he said. "Everyone's accounted for. I'll see them in the morning." She had nodded, but she knew better. Night, she thought, was when people corrected their mistakes. At 11, the clock from the church struck. Clear, cold. Her hand moved to the curtain edge. The moon sat low, painting silver over the grass, every path visible, every shadow honest. Then movement, a figure crossing the field, slow, careful, a man's stride, broad shoulders, a coat pulled tight. She leaned forward. No lantern, no light. The shape slipped between the hedges like a ghost with purpose. Straight to the pavilion door. The lock gave no sound, but the door eased open. Moonlight touched metal inside. Something gleamed. Something thin. He bent low, worked quickly. The glint of wire caught her eye. He was replacing what he had removed. She watched his hands. Precise, confident. A man who'd done this before. A soft noise broke the silence. Another shape moved closer from the opposite hedge. Smaller. Quick steps. A woman's outline. The man straightened, turned sharply. The woman whispered words lost to distance. Then a flash of motion. A hand raised. A gloved hand. Marple's fingers tightened on the curtain. No sound followed, just silence folding back in place. The woman stepped forward, bent, picked up something from the ground. A paper? A tool? Then she turned and hurried off toward the lane. The man stood still, head bowed. Then he too slipped away, melting into the dark. Miss Marple didn't move for a long time, her eyes on that open door. It stayed half ajar, swinging slightly with the breeze. She counted the seconds. The stillness was too heavy, too exact. Finally, she rose, pulled the curtain closed. Her voice, barely above a whisper, broke the quiet. "Someone was back," she said softly, "and not alone." Morning came with thin mist over the cricket field. The pavilion stood still, locked, empty, but not quiet. Miss Marple felt it the moment she stepped through the gate's stillness-hiding movement. Inspector Slack arrived a few minutes later. He looked tired, his collar unbuttoned, his temper close to the surface. "Back again, Miss Marple? Couldn't sleep either?" She smiled faintly. "No, but neither could whoever returned last night." Slack stopped walking. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Someone was here," she said simply. "After dark." He frowned. "And how do you know?" "Because locks don't repolish themselves." She moved past him, slow but sure. The pavilion smelled of damp wood and tea leaves. Sunlight caught the floor in dull stripes. Slack checked the door. Still bolted. From outside, yes, she said, but someone left through the back. She led him toward the small utility room. The air was heavier there, smoky. Slack sniffed once. Fire? She nodded. Small one. Controlled. He crouched near the bin. Inside lay a heap of grey ash, faintly metallic, still warm at the core. He poked it with a pencil. Paper, he muttered. And cloth. Burned clean. Marple lifted a corner of the remaining fabric. Half a label clung to it, charred but readable. Scorebook binding, she said quietly. Slack cursed under his breath. So someone destroyed records. Or rewrote them first, she replied. She looked around. The desk drawer stood slightly open. Inside, a small weight wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it, lead core, shaped like a cricket ball's interior. Weighted, she said. Too heavy for fair play. Slack took it, turned it in his hand. So this was the murder weapon? She shook her head. No. A rehearsal, maybe. He blinked. Rehearsal? Yes. Someone tested balance, distance, and fall. Her gaze drifted toward the cabinet's fallen place. Planning requires patience, Inspector, and practice. He stared at the burned ash again. What kind of person would plan that far? The kind who values precision more than people, she said. Slack scribbled notes furiously. Weighted ball. Burned papers. Someone covering tracks. He shut the notebook hard. So, what's your guess? I don't guess, she said softly. I notice. Her eyes caught something near the baseboard, a thin smear of black grease. Mechanical oil. Fresh. It led to the window latch. Faint fingerprints visible against the frame. Tools, she murmured. Tools. Slack repeated. Yes. Whoever came back last night carried them. He exhaled slowly. To fix or to finish? To hide, she said. She looked once more at the ash, the lead, the smear, the latch, pieces arranging themselves in her quiet mind. Every trace small, deliberate, rehearsed. No impulse here, only method. Her tone turned colder. Someone planned this, she said, pausing on each word, far in advance. They sat at the scorer's table. Morning light pressed through the dusty glass. Papers stacked, ink bottle open. Miss Marple's eyes on the pages, steady, precise. Inspector Slack leaned on the edge, arms folded. All right, he said. Let's lay it out. Step by step. She nodded once. Harold Cleave entered the pavilion at 3:28. He wrote it down. He was alive when the bell rang? Yes. Witnesses saw him through the window. Slack tapped his pencil. Bell rang at 3:31. Wrong time. Marple agreed. And that gave someone 4 minutes. He looked up. 4 minutes to do what? To open the wire, release the cabinet, and leave through the back. Without being seen? Yes. Everyone was moving toward tea. Slack-paced. Who could manage that quietly? Someone familiar with the layout, she said. Someone who worked here often. He nodded slowly. George. Hawkley. She didn't answer. Just turned another page in the scorebook. The ink shimmered faintly. Half the entries dry and brown. One page darker, fresh, deliberate. She traced it with her finger. This was written after the death, she said. Slack leaned in. How do you know? The handwriting changed. The strokes tremble. The nib scratched deeper. And this total here, 34 overs. It's wrong. He blinked. Wrong how? She pointed to the bottom margin. Mr. Cleave always noted initials beside his tallies, but these see, different hand. Smaller, slanted left. Slack swore under his breath. So Nell lied. Not yet proven, she said softly. But she altered this page, and she burned the old one. Slack slapped the notebook shut. She's done for. Marple didn't move. No, Inspector. Someone told her to. He frowned. You think she was helping? I think she was scared. They both looked toward the window. The field stretched empty, peaceful again. It often was after something terrible. Slack spoke again. So, sequence is this: Cleave enters. Wire released. Cabinet falls. Bell rings early to draw people outside. Then later, book rewritten to hide timing. She nodded. Accurate, but missing one motive. He looked at her. Money? She shook her head. Reputation. The Pavilion fund. Cleve had found misuse. Numbers didn't match. Slack's eyes narrowed. Salt? Possibly. But Hawkley managed the accounts and the grounds. He could move things unnoticed. He had tools, wire, access. Slack exhaled. It's almost neat. Almost, she said. Her eyes moved to the inkpot beside the ledger. A drop of black glistened where none should be. Too wet for morning, too perfect for coincidence. She picked up the pen. It was clean, too clean. Wiped recently. Slack saw it too. Someone rewrote last night, he said quietly. She nodded. She placed the pen down again, carefully, as though it might still speak. Every truth, she whispered, has its paper trail. The room fell silent. Only the slow ticking of the clock filled the air. Then her voice again, faint but sharp. The lie, she said, was written in ink. Inspector Slack began the questioning after midday. The air inside the pavilion was tight, windows half open, silence thick. Nell Armitage sat at the table, hands clasped, eyes on the floor. Miss Marple sat across, knitting idle, voice calm. Slack stood behind her chair, his tone clipped. You altered the scorebook. Nell shook her head. No, sir. You burned papers. I didn't. You rang the bell early. Her lips pressed together. Yes, I thought it was time. Slack leaned closer. Why thought? Why not knew? She blinked fast. Because Mr. Cleve told me once never delay tea when the players looked tired. Yet he was. Inside, Slack said. You knew that. I didn't see him go. Convenient, he muttered. Miss Marple's tone stayed soft. You liked Mr. Cleve, didn't you? Nell nodded slowly. Everyone did. He was fair. Fairness often frightens people, Marple said, especially those hiding something. Nell's eyes lifted. I'm not hiding anything. Then tell us, Marple said gently. Who gave you that new ink bottle? Nell froze. Slack straightened. What ink bottle? Marple gestured toward the desk. The one you used to rewrite the book. It wasn't yours. It smells of oil. Nell's voice cracked. It was left there. Mr. Hawkley said to use it. He said the old ink had dried. Slack's pencil stopped midair. Hawkley? Yes, she said. He told me to make the numbers tidy. He said the committee would notice uneven pages. Slack slammed the notebook shut. Why didn't you say that earlier? Nell flinched. He said it would look bad for the club. He said Cleve approved it. Marple leaned forward. And did he? Nell whispered. No. He didn't even know. Slack began pacing. So Hawkley gives her the ink, tells her to fix numbers. Same day Cleve dies. He looked up sharply. That's not coincidence. Nell's eyes darted toward the door. He said he'd burn the scraps himself. He told me not to worry. Marple's tone stayed even. And you believed him? She nodded. He's worked here for 20 years. I thought he was honest. Slack's jaw tightened. Honest men don't polish locks at midnight. Nell gasped. You saw him? Marple nodded once. From my window. The room went silent. Nell's breathing quickened. Her fingers twisted together until the knuckles blanched. Slack spoke low. You're helping yourself now, Miss Armitage. Don't stop. Nell stared at the table. He said the wire was for a display, that it would hold the cabinet steady. He said, Mr. Cleve had approved it. Marple's gaze sharpened. Did you see the cabinet fall? She shook her head. But I heard the sound, Nell whispered. Sharp. Like something cut loose. Her hands trembled. Her knitting ring clinked softly against the tabletop. But when she spoke again, her voice didn't. The afternoon stretched long and tense. The village waited for answers, and the pavilion held its breath. Inspector Slack stood by the open door, watching the field. Armitage gives us Hawkley, he said. Now we see if it holds. Miss Marple nodded once. Truth has a way of shifting seats before it settles. Hockley arrived soon after, cap in hand, boots muddy, eyes wary. "Afternoon, Inspector." Slack gestured to the chair. "Sit. You've been busy this week." The man frowned. "Groundwork never ends." "Not that kind," Slack said. He dropped the leather strip on the P's table. Hockley's name stamped clear inside. "You recognize this?" Hockley shrugged. "Old repair belt. I've got dozens." "Then you won't mind explaining the piano wire threaded through it." Hockley's eyes narrowed. "Found that, did you?" "We did," Slack said. "And Nell says you gave her a new ink bottle. You also burned papers." Hockley barked a short laugh. "She's frightened, Inspector. Says what she thinks you want to hear." Marple watched him closely, his hands steady, his tone too easy, too prepared. "Mr. Hockley," she said softly, "you repaired the cabinet last week, didn't you?" He nodded. "And you hung the sight screen the same morning?" "Yes." She smiled faintly. "That would explain the brass tacks. 2 missing, 1 replaced. The one from the cabinet's base fits the screen's frame perfectly." Slack's eyes flicked up. "You're saying he used screen parts for the trap?" "Exactly," she said. "And to do that he needed access before the match." Hockley's jaw tightened. "You've got imagination, Miss Marple." "Only memory," she replied. "You told me 2 days ago the grass needed evening cutting. Yet the mower lines show you worked at dusk, not morning. You were here late alone." Slack moved closer. "So what were you doing after dark?" Hockley met his stare. "Checking locks. Cleve told me the cabinet hinge was loose." "And did you fix it?" "I did." "Then why polish the lock again at midnight?" Hockley froze. His mouth opened, closed. Silence. Miss Marple leaned back. "People who lie," she said, "often polish the wrong thing." Slack smiled thinly. "I'd say that's our man." But Marple didn't nod. Her gaze had shifted to the desk by the window, to a thin folder half hidden under the ledger. She reached for it. The top sheet was folded twice. Ink fresh, paper warm. She opened it. Slack. Stepped closer. "What is it?" Her eyes scanned the page once. Her hand stilled. It wasn't the ledger. It wasn't the match record. It was a receipt. Signed. Stamped. Date. 3 days after Cleve's death. Name. Harold Cleve. Slack stared. "That's impossible." Marple nodded slowly. "Exactly." The paper trembled in her fingers. Her voice came low, deliberate, final. Then came the paper. That shouldn't exist. The receipt lay flat on the table. Slack stared at it, as if it might explain itself. "Signed by a dead man," he muttered. "So someone forged it." Miss Marple nodded. "And someone needed that signature to survive." She turned the page slowly. "Notice the handwriting, Inspector. It matches the new entries in the scorebook. Same slant, same ink, same mistake in the letter R." Slack's pencil snapped in two. "Nell?" "Not quite," she said softly. "Nell wrote it, yes, but she didn't understand what it was for." He frowned. "Then who told her?" "Mr. Hockley," she said. "And he was told by someone higher." Slack blinked. "Higher? Who'd be above him in this little world?" She didn't answer. She simply pointed to the heading on the receipt, Pavilion Fund Disbursement. Slack read the line aloud. "To Victor Salt, Treasurer." His face hardened. "The committee man." "Yes," she said. "Cleve discovered missing money. He intended to report it. Salt needed proof that Cleve approved the transfer. He used Nell's trust and Hockley's skill to create it." Slack rubbed his jaw. "And when Cleve refused to sign," Marple's voice lowered, "he signed for him." She stood, walked toward the cabinet's broken place. Cleve threatened to reveal the fraud at the next meeting. Salt knew he had one chance to stop him quietly. A fall that looked like chance. A cabinet already prepared. Slack followed her gaze. "But Hockley rigged it." "Yes." Salt supplied the plan. Hockley supplied the hands. Nell cleaned the trail. "And now all three are trapped," Slack said. Marple looked at the window where the morning light glowed pale against the dust. Fear makes clever people clumsy, Inspector. They thought timing would protect them. They thought one false bell could hide a false ledger. She lifted the leather strap again. The wire was measured to an inch, every nail placed with care, even the scorch marks arranged to mimic chance. Slack shook his head. They killed a man over money. Marple's eyes softened. Not just money. Reputation, a village fund gone astray would ruin more than one name. Salt feared shame more than prison. Slack's tone turned sharp. Then why involve Hawkley? Because, she said, Salt needed someone practical. Someone who believed in fixing things. Hawkley thought he was preventing a scandal, not creating one. Slack muttered. And Nell? She followed orders. Thought she was helping tidy figures. Fear, Inspector, spreads quietly, like ink in water. The room fell still. Only the clock ticked between them. Miss Marple laid the paper back on the desk, aligning the edges neatly. All three feared exposure, she said. Each acted from panic, not cruelty, but the precision. That was Salt's hand. She paused, her gaze steady, her tone like a whisper meant for logic itself. Why so carefully done? The sky outside was flat and grey, the village still, waiting. Inside the pavilion, the air held a kind of calm that came only before truth appeared. Miss Marple had requested one more meeting. Inspector Slack didn't argue. He trusted her pattern of silence before revelation. Victor Salt arrived first. Pressed suit, controlled smile. Behind him, Hawkley walked slower, heavier, eyes down. Nell followed last, pale and quiet, as though her courage had been borrowed. Marple sat by the table. No notes, no papers. Only a single teacup beside her. Thank you all, she said gently. We shall tidy one small matter before the police finish theirs. Slack leaned against the wall, arms folded. Marple's voice stayed even. We have a receipt signed by a dead man. We have wire cut to measure, a cabinet rigged, and an ink bottle that travelled from Hawkley's shelf to Nell's desk. What remains unclear is whose idea tied it all together. Salt gave a short laugh. Surely you don't expect me to answer for their foolishness. Marple smiled faintly. Not yet, but you might help test a theory. She opened a folder and laid out 3 identical slips of paper. Each of you, please, sign your name. Same pen, same hand. Nell hesitated. Salt shrugged. Hawkley frowned. Routine, Marple said softly. Ink speaks as plainly as words. One by one they signed. She collected the slips, laid them side by side, then lifted the original receipt. Her eyes moved between them, slow and certain. The handwriting on the forged document, she said, was not Nell's, nor Hawkley's. It was yours, Mr. Salt. He stood sharply. This is absurd. Slack stepped forward. Sit down. Salt's face hardened. Cleve forced my hand. He threatened the committee. I tried to reason with him. Marple interrupted softly. And reason led you to wire and leather? He turned away. His control slipped. He would have ruined us all, he said. I meant only to frighten him. Hawkley swore the cabinet would hold. It did, Marple said, until you pulled the wire. Silence filled the room. Even the clock seemed to stop. Salt sank into the chair. He was shouting. I lost my temper. I never meant... Marple's tone stayed calm. You meant precision, Mr. Salt. You meant it to look like accident, and it did. He buried his face in his hands. Nell began to cry softly. Hawkley sat still, head bowed. Marple stood, her teacup still half full, steam faint and slow. She turned toward Slack. There's your truth, Inspector. Signed and tested. Slack nodded once. He placed his hand on Salt's shoulder. No words left to say. Marple looked down at the forged receipt. Her fingers brushed the wet edge of the ink line smudged slightly under her touch. Because truth, she whispered, always leaves a mark. The room stayed still after her words. No one spoke. No one moved. The kind of silence that follows logic too heavy to break. Victor Salt sat forward, elbows on his knees. His voice came low, almost level. So that's it then. All the cleverness in the world, undone by a pen stroke. Miss Marple didn't answer. She rarely did when truth had already spoken. Inspector Slack closed his notebook. "Mr. Salt," he said quietly, "you'll come with me." Salt looked up, his face calm, not frightened, just finished. He nodded once. "No need for spectacle, Inspector. I'll walk." Nell sobbed into her handkerchief. Hawkley kept his head down. Marple watched them both. "You'll each have to answer for what you did," she said softly. "But answers come easier when they're honest." Hawkley's voice cracked. "I didn't know he'd pull it. I thought it was just for show." Slack turned to him. "You built the trap. I built many things, none meant for killing." He rubbed his hands, eyes wet. Marple spoke again. "You believed in repair, Mr. Hawkley, but some things break beyond mending." He nodded, small and tired. "I see that now." Salt stood, straightened his cuffs. "Let them be, Inspector. They were only pieces in a game I started." Slack stepped closer. "You admit the fraud?" "Yes. I moved funds, said it was temporary. Cleve found out. I panicked. A good name means everything in a small place like this." Marple's tone stayed gentle. "Reputation fades faster than truth, Mr. Salt. You could have chosen silence." He smiled sadly. "I chose calculation instead." He reached for his coat. Slack gestured to the constable at the door. "Walk him to the car." Salt paused by the threshold. He looked back once at Marple. "You should have been a judge," he said. She shook her head. "No, just an observer. Judges arrive after the harm is done." He nodded. Then he was gone. The door shut softly behind him. Slack exhaled, shoulders lowering. "Never gets easier, does it?" "No," Marple said, "but it gets clearer." Nell stood shakily. Will he be hanged?" Slack didn't answer. Marple looked at her instead. "Justice, my dear, has many ways of speaking, some kinder than others." Nell whispered, "I only wanted to help." Marple nodded. "And in the end you did." The constable's steps faded down the corridor. Outside, the sound of a car engine turned over once, then settled into distance. The clock on the wall ticked again, steady, polite, unchanged. Marple reached for her knitting. Yarn soft, rhythm restored. Slack looked toward the window, where sunlight touched the green field once more. It was over. No shouts, no final words, just quiet. It ended, as softly as it began. Morning came pale and slow. The mist lifted over the green. The pavilion stood quiet again, as if nothing had happened. Miss Marple sat by her kitchen window, teacup warm between her hands. No words, no rush, just steam rising, curling, fading. The village went back to its habits. The postman whistled. Mrs. Potley baked. The vicar rehearsed his sermon on honesty. Life, she thought, always repairs itself, though never in the same pattern. Inspector Slack had left earlier. Tired, thoughtful. He had said only, "You were right again." But right never felt like victory. Only order restored for a moment. Her eyes drifted toward the field. The grass looked clean. New chalk lines marked the pitch. Fresh, precise, forgiving. She sipped her tea. It had cooled but not lost its strength. Like truth itself. Quiet, patient, relentless. Every lie they'd told, every fear they'd hidden, had led them here to silence, to exposure, to consequence. She looked down at the swirl inside her cup. The steam lingered a little longer this morning. She smiled faintly, because in Street Mary Mead, justice always brewed quietly. Truth cools slower than tea. Davis's voice returns, warm as the morning light. The story settles, but the thoughts remain. He looks toward the empty field, mentions the teacup and the cabinet. Both quiet now, but both carrying truth. Then he turns back to you. Which clue caught your ear first? The sound of the bell, or the mark on the wall? He smiles gently. Tell me in the comments, and share your thoughts with our little village. The pause stretches like steam from a kettle. Tomorrow, he says, softly, another kettle will boil. The night settles over Street Mary Mead once more. Windows close, lanterns fade. The village breathes in quiet again. But beyond the calm, another whisper begins. A postman's step, a letter never delivered, a secret sealed in ink. Davis's voice lowers, almost to a hush. One quiet lane, one missing letter, one truth waiting. The sound fades slowly like a clock winding down, like tea cooling in the cup until only curiosity remains.